This is my homily for Thursday, March 19th. March 19th, the Solemnity of St. Joseph. So this is a great day. This is a solemnity, right? And it's so sad we can't have Mass together. But it's still Solemnity of St. Joseph. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. And so you remember the gospel passages where Joseph is encountering the truth of what's happening with Mary, right? And so Mary tells Joseph that she's going to have a child, and he knows it's not his child, at least, in the natural sense of the natural order of things, it's not his child. And so he immediately assumes that Mary has been unfaithful. Maybe she created this story. She didn't want to hurt Joseph, so maybe she created this story to, whatever it is, it's not adding up for Joseph. Now, totally normal, totally natural for anybody in his circumstance to come to that conclusion. The gospel today has a line that just caught my attention. We've all heard it many times before, but it says, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home." Do not be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home. And so God is asking Joseph to overcome a fear. Now, where did that fear come from? The fear came from him trying to make sense of the events, but coming to the conclusion that Mary's a terrible sinner. Mary has sinned against him and against God. And so he doesn't want that in his home. I tell people all the time, do not allow mortal sin into your home, right? So that's why you need to be very careful about what your kids watch on the internet and what they watch on TV and what happens in the home. And if there's like domestic violence, if there's things like that, say don't allow it. Absolutely do not allow that kind of behavior, that kind of activity in the home. Because once we do, it's just like opening the door to Satan, just letting him reign in the home. So that makes sense that he would not want to allow Mary into his home, right? But that's also not the truth in this situation. What he thinks is true is not true. And so God steps in to confront what is not true to bring truth. And that is what Joseph must embrace, right? And that is something supernatural that he has to overcome. Now, yesterday in my homily, I talked about how when people first encounter Jesus, many times their first impression is fear or sometimes even hatred, because Jesus is going to force them to confront the reality of the truth, which could mean their sinfulness, right? Could mean them rejecting God's will. But then as they warm up to Jesus, they can overcome that fear. And so there's this moment where Joseph has to overcome his fear. And so this is going to mean him getting closer to God, right? And so the issue then for him is not necessarily whether or not he's being faithful, right? By not allowing Mary into his home because he thinks he's a sinner, but now it's him being faithful to God. By him being faithful to God, every time I record my homilies, there's always something that happens that gets me all distracted. It's a dad with his kid in a wagon, but it's making a ton of noise. Okay, all right. So this is not about him expecting Mary to be faithful because she wasn't. This is about him being faithful to God because he wasn't. And not that he sinned, but he wasn't quite ready for the truth, right? And so he has to become ready for the truth. I was just thinking earlier also about Joseph. In the Gospels, he never speaks. I should say, he never says anything that's recorded in the Gospels. And so you would think, because of that there wouldn't be a huge devotion to him. We wouldn't make a big deal out of him, right? You look at the other apostles who never say anything that's recorded in the scriptures, and we don't really make a big deal out of them. You don't see a really strong devotion to them in general, right? It's not very often you see a really strong devotion to, St. Bartholomew or St. Philip. And they speak a little bit, but not much. But Joseph never speaks. And I think the reason that there actually is a very strong devotion to him is because of his response, obviously, in saying yes to God and taking Mary into his home. For us as men, especially for all married men, the ability of them to be a good dad, a good husband, to create a home where God is present is not easy. And it's not just them choosing the things in their own lives, but it's them choosing what their home life is going to be like. Is it going to just resemble the world? Is it just mirror the world? Or is it going to be something intrinsically different, something supernatural? And that's really hard. It's really hard for men. I think in some ways it's a little easier for women, just that they have more of a natural, or you say a supernatural inclination to be open to God's voice and to what he's saying. But for men, it's so easy for us to be taken by the world. Maybe I'm exaggerating the difference between men and women here. And I'm not in any way trying to make excuses for men. But I think the reason that we often look up to St. Joseph, even though in the Gospels he says nothing, is the simple things that he does do. I have yet to meet a man who will just come out and say, I don't want to be a good husband, or I don't want to be a good father. I think men do, but they can just get so lost in the midst of things. And so Joseph, I think, becomes a great intercessor for us to help bring us back to Jesus so that we can be closer to him, right? And so we can look upon our family as an extension of our own faith, and one that we're proud of, one where we made the right decisions, ones where we chose to do what was right, just like Joseph did with his wife Mary, right? All right. Maybe tomorrow I'll have a homily where I don't get distracted. All right. We are planning to live stream on Facebook our Mass in English this coming Sunday at 10 a.m. And we're going to live stream the Mass in Spanish on Facebook this Sunday at 12 p.m. You need to go to the right Facebook account, because there's two that are set up for St. Mary's. And it's the one that's linked on our webpage. So the second you go to our webpage, it's right there at the top. It says live streaming of the Mass. Just click on that link, and that'll take you there. So 10 a.m. in English and 12 p.m. in Spanish. And I think we're going to try and keep doing that all the way through until we all get to come back home, right? And have Mass here in the parish. Okay. So what that means is there's no confessions on Sundays. I had to change my plans because of this change. But I have confessions on Tuesdays, 4 to 7, Thursdays, 4 to 7 in the evening, and then Saturdays, 10 to 12, all right? So please come to confession. Come to confession sometime during Lent. Just make that something that you do a really good examination of conscience. You come to confession. That'd be a really great thing to do. All right? All right. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.